When I arrived at my mother's funeral 20 minutes late, still in my scrubs from an emergency shift at Portland General Hospital, I expected to slip quietly into the back pew of St. Mary's Catholic Church. Instead, I found the sanctuary nearly empty except for a handful of neighbors and my mother's caretaker, Maria. My siblings David and Lisa sat in the front row with Lisa's husband, James. But when I approached, David turned and whispered words that would haunt me for months. "You weren't invited, Rebecca. Mom specifically said she didn't want you here. You abandoned her when she needed you most." The shock of those words was nothing compared to what I discovered 3 weeks later when Mom's attorney called with news that would turn my siblings' calculated cruelty into their worst nightmare. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning everything fell apart started like any other Tuesday in my life as a traveling nurse. I had been working a particularly challenging assignment at Portland General Hospital, covering for staff shortages in their intensive care unit. The work was demanding but fulfilling, helping families navigate some of the most difficult moments of their lives. I specialized in geriatric care, partly because of my own experience watching my mother Elena struggle with Alzheimer's disease over the past 3 years. Mom had been diagnosed when I was 28, just as my nursing career was really taking off. The disease progressed slowly at first, small lapses in memory that we all attributed to normal aging. Elena Martinez had always been the cornerstone of our family, running the small but beloved Martinez Family Bakery on Main Street in Riverside, California. She had built that business from nothing after my father died when I was 15, working 18-hour days to keep food on our table and maintain the modest ranch house on Maple Street where we had all grown up. The bakery specialized in traditional Mexican pastries, and Mom's conchas were legendary throughout our neighborhood. She had learned the recipes from her own mother, and the business represented not just her livelihood but our family's heritage. Every morning before dawn she would arrive at the bakery to begin the day's baking, filling the small shop with the aroma of cinnamon and vanilla that drew customers from across the city. As Mom's condition worsened, my older siblings David and Lisa had stepped in to help manage her affairs. David, who was 35 and worked in sales for a medical equipment company, lived just 10 minutes away from Mom in a small apartment complex called Sunset Gardens. Lisa, 33 and married to James Cooper, had moved to the more upscale Oak Hills neighborhood after James landed a management position at a local credit union. They had no children and seemed to have plenty of time to devote to Mom's care. I, on the other hand, had chosen a career path that kept me traveling constantly. Traveling nurses like myself filled critical gaps in hospitals across the country, working temporary assignments wherever the need was greatest. The work was emotionally demanding but financially rewarding, and I had been saving diligently with hopes of eventually opening my own practice or perhaps helping Mom expand the bakery. My relationship with David and Lisa had always been complicated. As the youngest of 3 children, I had often felt like an outsider in my own family. David and Lisa were only 2 years apart and had always been close, sharing inside jokes and making decisions together. They viewed my career choice as selfish, a way of avoiding family responsibilities while they dealt with the day-to-day challenges of Mom's declining health. The truth was more nuanced. I had deliberately chosen assignments that would allow me to gain experience in geriatric and memory care, hoping to better understand Mom's condition and eventually return home to help care for her myself. Every paycheck, I sent money home to help with her medical expenses and the costs of keeping the bakery running. I called Mom every day, though the conversations became increasingly difficult as her condition progressed. 3 months before that terrible Tuesday, I had taken an assignment in Portland specifically because it was close enough to drive home to Riverside on weekends. I had been planning to finish the contract and move back permanently to help with Mom's care. My siblings knew about these plans, but they seemed skeptical about my commitment. The morning of Mom's funeral, I had been working a double shift covering for a colleague whose own family emergency had created a staffing crisis. I had requested time off to attend the service, but the hospital was desperately short-staffed, and several critical patients needed specialized care that only I was qualified to provide. I made the difficult decision to work until the last possible moment, then drive the 6 hours from Portland to Riverside to arrive in time for the service. What I didn't know was that Mom had passed away 3 days earlier. My siblings had made all the funeral arrangements without consulting me, choosing a date and time without considering my work schedule or location. They claimed they had tried to reach me, but my phone records would later show no missed calls from either of them during the days following Mom's death. I learned about Mom's passing from Maria Santos, her caretaker, who called me in tears the night before the funeral. Maria had been with our family for 2 years, helping Mom with daily activities as her Alzheimer's progressed. She was a kind, patient woman in her 50s who had become genuinely attached to Mom, treating her with the dignity and respect she deserved. Rebecca Mia, I am so sorry, Maria had said through her tears. Your mother, she passed peacefully on Sunday morning. I thought you knew. Your brother and sister, they said they would contact you. The shock of learning about Mom's death secondhand was devastating, but what hurt even more was realizing that David and Lisa had deliberately excluded me from the funeral planning. When I called David that night, his response was cold and matter-of-fact. We tried to reach you, but you're never available, he said. Besides, Mom was pretty clear in her final weeks that she felt abandoned by you. She kept asking why you weren't there, and we didn't know what to tell her. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. I hadn't been physically present during Mom's final weeks, but I had been working to position.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Myself to return permanently. I had been in constant communication with Maria about Mom's condition and had sent additional money to ensure she received the best possible care. Lisa's response when I called her was even more hurtful. Rebecca, you made your choice when you decided your career was more important than family. Mom understood that, and she made peace with it. The funeral is for people who were actually part of her life these past few years. Despite their discouragement, I couldn't accept missing Mom's funeral entirely. I arranged for emergency coverage at the hospital and drove through the night to reach Riverside by Tuesday morning. I arrived at St. Mary's Catholic Church, where our family had attended Mass throughout my childhood, expecting to find the sanctuary filled with mourners celebrating Mom's life. Instead, the church was nearly empty. A few longtime neighbors sat scattered throughout the pews, along with Maria and some employees from the bakery. Mom had been beloved in our community, known for her generosity and warm spirit. She had donated countless pastries to school fundraisers and church events, always the first to offer help when neighbors faced difficulties. The sparse attendance at her funeral seemed impossible. I slipped into a pew near the back, still wearing the scrubs I had worn during my shift the night before. My appearance was disheveled after the long drive, my hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and my eyes red from crying and exhaustion. I had planned to change clothes before the service, but time had run out. David, Lisa, and James sat in the front pew, dressed immaculately in black. Lisa wore an expensive-looking dress and had clearly spent time on her hair and makeup. David was in a tailored suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. They looked like they were attending a business meeting rather than mourning our mother. When I stood to join them in the front pew, David turned and delivered the words that would echo in my mind for weeks afterward. You weren't invited, Rebecca. Mom specifically said she didn't want you here. You abandoned her when she needed you most. The priest, Father Miguel, looked uncomfortable as this family drama played out in his sanctuary. He had known our family for years and had watched Mom struggle with Alzheimer's with compassion and concern. His expression suggested he was surprised by David's harsh words, but he continued with the service without intervening. I remained in the back pew, feeling like a stranger at my own mother's funeral. The service was brief and impersonal, lacking the warmth and celebration of life that Mom deserved. David gave a short eulogy that focused primarily on Mom's business accomplishments and community involvement, mentioning Lisa's assistance during Mom's illness but making no reference to me at all. Lisa spoke briefly about Mom's strength and determination, again emphasizing her own role as a devoted daughter, while pointedly ignoring my existence. Their speeches painted a picture of a family that consisted of only 3 people, with no acknowledgement of the 4th daughter who had driven 6 hours through the night to pay her respects. The most painful moment came when Father Miguel invited family members to share memories of Mom. I stood to speak, hoping to share some of the beautiful conversations Mom and I had shared during our daily phone calls, but David quickly stood and announced that the family had already spoken and it was time to proceed to the cemetery. At Pinewood Cemetery, the graveside service was equally brief and cold. Mom's casket was covered with flowers that I hadn't chosen, surrounded by arrangements from people who had somehow learned about the funeral, despite my siblings' apparent efforts to keep the service small and private. The sight of her name on the temporary marker made everything feel final in a way that hit me like a physical blow. As dirt was thrown onto the casket, I stood apart from my siblings, who continued to exclude me from their tight circle of grief. Maria approached me afterward, her eyes filled with tears and something that looked like anger. "This is not what your mother would have wanted," she whispered to me. "She loved you so much, Mia. She talked about you every day, worried about you working so hard, was so proud of how you helped people. This," she gestured toward David and Lisa, "this is not her wish." Maria's words provided some comfort, but they also raised questions that would trouble me for weeks. If Mom had really felt abandoned by me, why would Maria say otherwise? If Mom truly hadn't wanted me at the funeral, why did the woman who spent every day with her during her final months seem so surprised by my siblings' treatment? After the burial, David and Lisa left quickly with James, making no effort to include me in any post-funeral gathering. I stood alone by Mom's grave until the cemetery workers began their final preparations, still unable to fully process what had happened. I drove back to Mom's house on Maple Street, using the key I had kept since childhood. The small ranch-style home where I had grown up felt different, smaller somehow, filled with shadows and silence. Many of Mom's personal belongings were already gone, packed away or disposed of without my knowledge. Her bedroom had been stripped of the photographs and mementos that had made it uniquely hers. The kitchen where Mom had tested bakery recipes and taught me to make her famous conchas felt especially empty. The walls were bare, missing the family photos that had chronicled our lives together. Someone had already begun the process of clearing out her possessions, making decisions about what to keep and what to discard without including me in the process. I spent that night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories and overwhelmed by grief that was complicated by anger and confusion. My siblings' behavior at the funeral had been so unlike the family dynamics I remembered from our youth. Yes, we had grown apart as adults, but the deliberate cruelty they had shown seemed completely out of character. The next morning, I called the Martinez family bakery, hoping to speak with some of Mom's longtime employees about the funeral arrangements. The phone was answered by someone I didn't recognize, who informed me that the bakery was temporarily closed pending ownership transition discussions. When I asked about Mom's employees, particularly Carmen Rodriguez, who had worked alongside Mom for over 15 years, I was told that all staff had been let go immediately following Mom's death. This news was shocking. Mom had always treated her employees like family, and Carmen in particular had been like a second daughter to her. The idea that these loyal workers had been dismissed without notice or consideration seemed completely contrary to everything Mom valued. I drove to the bakery and found it locked, with official-looking notices posted in the windows. The cheerful yellow paint that Mom had chosen for the exterior looked faded and sad, and the hand-painted sign bearing our family name seemed like a relic from a different era. Through the windows, I could see that much of the equipment had already been moved or covered, suggesting that closure was more than temporary. My attempts to reach David and Lisa for explanations were met with increasingly hostile responses. David accused me of trying to swoop in and claim assets after abandoning Mom during her illness. Lisa suggested that I had forfeited any right to family property by choosing my career over my responsibilities. Their accusations were painful because they contained elements that I couldn't completely deny. I had chosen assignments that kept me away from Riverside during Mom's decline. I had prioritized my professional development over constant physical presence during her illness. But I had also sent money regularly, maintained daily contact, and been planning to return permanently to help with her care. The disconnect between Maria's description of Mom's feelings about me and my siblings' claims became increasingly troubling. According to Maria, Mom had spoken about me fondly and frequently, expressing pride in my work and concern for my well-being. According to David and Lisa, Mom had felt abandoned and specifically requested that I be excluded from her funeral. Someone was lying, and I was beginning to suspect it wasn't Maria. 3 weeks after the funeral, I was back in Portland completing my assignment when I received a phone call that would change everything. The caller identified himself as Robert Chen from the law firm Chen & Associates in Riverside. He explained that he had been Elena Martinez's attorney for the past several years and needed to schedule a meeting regarding her estate. "I've been trying to locate you for some time," Mr. Chen said. "Your mother's will specifically requests that all beneficiaries be present for the reading, and your siblings have been reluctant to provide your contact information." The word beneficiaries surprised me. Based on David and Lisa's behavior, I had assumed that Mom's will would reflect their claims about her feelings toward me. If I was listed as a beneficiary, it suggested that Mom's true wishes might be very different from what my siblings had told me. Mr. Chen scheduled the meeting for the following Friday afternoon, giving me time to request leave from the hospital and make travel arrangements. He mentioned that the reading had been delayed specifically because of my siblings' failure to provide my contact information, which raised additional questions about their honesty. When I called David to inform him about the scheduled will reading, his response was tellingly defensive. "I don't know why Chen is insisting on including you," he said. "Mom was pretty clear about her intentions, and you're not going to like what you hear." Lisa's reaction was similar but more aggressively dismissive. "Rebecca, you're going to be disappointed if you think Mom left you anything significant." She had very strong feelings about people who abandon their responsibilities. Their confident assertions about the will's contents suggested they believed they knew exactly what it contained. But their obvious discomfort with my inclusion in the reading indicated that they might not be as certain as they claimed. As Friday approached, I found myself anxious but also hopeful. If Mom's will included provisions for me, it would validate Maria's claims about Mom's true feelings and contradict my siblings' narrative of abandonment and exclusion. More importantly, it might provide some closure and help me understand what had really happened during Mom's final weeks. The law offices of Chen and Associates occupied a modest but professional building on Main Street, not far from where the Martinez family bakery had operated for over 20 years. Mr. Chen was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, who greeted me with genuine warmth and sympathy when I arrived for the appointment. David and Lisa were already seated in the conference room when I entered, their expressions guarded and unwelcoming. James had accompanied Lisa, though Mr. Chen explained that he would need to wait in the reception area, since he wasn't a named beneficiary. The atmosphere in the room was tense as Mr. Chen organized his documents and prepared to begin the reading. My siblings sat on one side of the large conference table, while I took a seat across from them, feeling once again like an outsider in my own family. What none of us anticipated was that Mom's will would reveal secrets that would fundamentally change our understanding of her final months, and force us all to confront truths that some of us had been desperately trying to hide. Mr. Chen cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses, the rustle of papers filling the uncomfortable silence in the conference room. "Before we begin with the formal reading of Elena Martinez's last will and testament, I want to provide some context about your mother's state of mind during her final months," he said, his voice carrying the weight of professional experience mixed with genuine compassion. "I had the privilege of knowing Elena for over 15 years, first as her business attorney when she was expanding the bakery, and later as her estate planning counsel." He paused, looking directly at each of us in turn. "What I'm about to share may surprise some of you, but Elena was remarkably lucid and determined during our final meetings. Despite her Alzheimer's diagnosis, she experienced what medical professionals call islands of clarity, particularly when discussing matters of deep importance to her. She insisted on updating her will multiple times during the past year, and each revision was made during periods when her mental faculties were completely intact, as documented by her physician Dr. Sarah Williams." David shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw tightening slightly. Lisa maintained her composed exterior, but I noticed her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. The mention of multiple will revisions seemed to catch them both off guard, though they tried to hide their surprise. Mr. Chen continued, "Elena came to my office for the final time on March 15th, just 6 weeks before her passing. She was accompanied by Maria Santos, her caretaker, who can attest to her mental clarity that day. Elena spent nearly 3 hours in my office, carefully reviewing every provision of her will, and making several significant changes. She was particularly concerned about ensuring that her true wishes would be honored, and that no one would be able to manipulate or misrepresent her intentions." The attorney opened a thick folder and withdrew several documents. Elena also left detailed letters explaining her reasoning for various provisions. She specifically requested that these letters be read aloud during the will reading, as she wanted everyone to understand her thought process and the love behind her decisions. Lisa finally spoke, her voice carefully controlled. "Mr. Chen, I hope you understand that Mom's condition was quite variable during her final months. There were many days when she was confused about basic facts, including which of her children had been most involved in her care. That's precisely why Elena took such care to document her mental state during our meetings." Mr. Chen replied smoothly. She anticipated that her decisions might be questioned, so she asked Dr. Williams to evaluate her cognitive function before each significant legal revision. "I have those medical assessments here, all confirming her complete competency at the time of her final will." David leaned forward aggressively. "Look, Mr. Chen, we appreciate your thoroughness, but we've been managing Mom's affairs for the past 2 years. We know exactly what her wishes were regarding the family assets. Rebecca here," he gestured dismissively in my direction, "hasn't been part of Mom's daily life. She chose her career over family responsibilities. I understand there have been family tensions, Mr. Chen acknowledged diplomatically, but Elena was very specific about addressing those concerns in her will. She left detailed explanations for her decisions, and I think you'll find her reasoning both thoughtful and fair. He opened the first document, a letter written in Mom's handwriting, though noticeably shakier than I remembered from years past. This is Elena's letter to all her children, written in her own hand and witnessed by myself and my paralegal. She insisted on writing it personally despite the difficulty caused by her tremor. Mr. Chen began to read in Mom's voice, as if channeling her spirit into the sterile conference room. My beloved children, if you are hearing this letter, then I have passed on to join your father in eternal rest. I want you to know that my final months were filled with reflection about our family, our relationships, and the legacy I hope to leave behind. David and Lisa, you have been physically present during my illness, and I am grateful for your attention to my daily needs. You have helped manage my medications, driven me to doctor appointments, and ensured that I was safe in my declining years. This kind of practical support is invaluable, and I want you to know how much I appreciated your efforts. However, I have been deeply troubled by some of the conversations and decisions made on my behalf during my more confused moments. There were times when my memory failed me, when I couldn't remember what day it was, or recognize familiar faces. During these episodes, I became aware that certain family members were making statements about my wishes that did not align with my true feelings. Lisa's face had gone pale, and David was staring fixedly at the table. Mr. Chen continued reading without pause. Rebecca, my youngest daughter, you chose a path that took you far from home, but never far from my heart. Your work as a nurse, caring for families during their most difficult moments, fills me with immense pride. I know that some have criticized your absence during my illness, but I want everyone to understand that your career choice reflects the values I tried to instill in all my children: the importance of service to others and dedication to meaningful work. During my clear moments, I treasured our daily phone conversations. Your voice brought me comfort and connection to the wider world beyond my limited daily routine. You shared stories about your patients and their families, reminding me that healing and compassion extend far beyond our small community. When you sent money to help with my medical expenses and the bakery's finances, it demonstrated a generosity of spirit that touched me deeply. I want to address the claim that I felt abandoned by Rebecca, or that I requested her exclusion from my funeral arrangements. This is categorically false. During my final weeks, when I was most vulnerable and confused, I repeatedly asked why Rebecca couldn't be with us more often. Some family members interpreted these questions as complaints or expressions of abandonment, but they were simply the natural longing of a mother for her absent child. David's composure finally cracked slightly. This is ridiculous. Mom was constantly upset about Rebecca never being around. She cried about it regularly. Mr. Chen looked up from the letter. David, please allow me to finish reading your mother's words. There will be time for discussion afterward. He resumed reading. I need my children to understand that my questions about Rebecca's absence came from love and longing, not from anger or resentment. I was proud of her work and understood the demands of her profession. Any tears I shed were from missing her, not from feeling betrayed by her. What concerns me deeply is the discovery that some family members have been making funeral arrangements and estate decisions based on their interpretation of my wishes, rather than my explicitly stated desires. I want to be absolutely clear. I never requested that any of my children be excluded from my funeral. I never expressed anger or disappointment about Rebecca's career choices. I never indicated that she should be disinherited or punished for her absence. The silence in the room was deafening. Lisa looked stricken, while David's face had flushed red with what appeared to be anger or embarrassment. I felt a complex mixture of vindication and sorrow, relief that Mom's true feelings were being revealed, but heartbreak over the manipulation that had occurred during her vulnerable final months. Mr. Chen continued with Mom's letter. I have become aware that there have been discussions about my funeral arrangements that do not reflect my wishes. I want all my children present at my service, surrounded by the community that knew and loved me. I want the Martinez family bakery to continue operating as a tribute to the work ethic and family values that built our success. I want my estate distributed in a way that honors each child's contributions while ensuring that no one is left without support. Most importantly, I want my children to understand that love is not diminished by distance, that family bonds are not severed by career choices, and that my greatest hope is for reconciliation and mutual support among the siblings I raised to care for one another. Mr. Chen set down the letter and looked around the table. Elena wanted these words read before we discussed the specific provisions of her will, because she believed understanding her motivations was as important as knowing her decisions. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is manipulative nonsense. Mom was confused most of the time. These so-called clear moments were few and far between. Rebecca swoops in after months of absence, and suddenly she's the devoted daughter. David, please sit down, Mr. Chen said firmly. Your mother anticipated this reaction, which is why she documented everything so thoroughly. We're going to review the medical assessments that confirm her competency, but first let me read the specific provisions of her will. Lisa finally spoke, her voice strained. Mr. Chen, surely you can understand our position. We've been here every day, managing Mom's care, dealing with the stress and responsibility while Rebecca sends an occasional check from whatever city she's working in. It's easy to be the loving daughter over the phone. Your mother addressed those exact concerns, Mr. Chen replied, retrieving another document. She left individual letters for each of you, explaining her reasoning for specific bequests. But first let me outline the basic structure of her estate. He opened the formal will document. Elena Martinez's estate consists primarily of the family home at 1247 Maple Street, the Martinez family bakery, including all equipment and inventory, approximately $180,000 in various savings and investment accounts, and several smaller assets including her personal vehicle and jewelry. The total estimated value of the estate is approximately $750,000, significantly more than your mother led some of you to believe during her final months. This information clearly shocked David and Lisa. Lisa gasped audibly, while David sank back into his chair with a stunned expression. They had apparently believed Mom's estate was much smaller, possibly based on misleading information they had received or assumptions they had made. Mr. Chen continued reading from the will. To my son David Martinez, I leave the sum of $50,000 in recognition of his assistance during my illness. This inheritance reflects my gratitude for his practical support, while acknowledging concerns about his financial management and decision-making during my vulnerable period. David's face went through several color changes, from pale shock to flushed anger. 50,000, that's it. After everything I did for her? Please let me finish, Mr. Chen said calmly. To my daughter Lisa Martinez Cooper, I leave the sum of $50,000 and my personal jewelry collection, again in recognition of her care during my illness, while addressing similar concerns about her involvement in estate decisions made without my full consent. Lisa's mouth fell open. She had clearly expected a much larger inheritance, possibly even the majority of Mom's estate. To my youngest daughter Rebecca Martinez, I leave the family home at 1247 Maple Street, the Martinez family bakery in its entirety, including all equipment, inventory, recipes, and business relationships, and the remainder of my financial assets, approximately $580,000. The shock on David and Lisa's faces was complete. They stared at Mr. Chen as if he had announced that Mom had left everything to charity. I felt my own shock, but of a different kind. Mom had not only vindicated my relationship with her, but had entrusted me with the family's most precious assets. This is impossible, David said, his voice rising. Mom would never have done this. Rebecca doesn't know anything about running a bakery. She's never even worked there. Actually, Mr. Chen said, consulting another document. Elena detailed her reasoning for these decisions in her individual letters. Rebecca, your mother specifically explained why she chose to leave you the bakery and family home. He withdrew another handwritten letter. This is Elena's explanation of her decision regarding the bakery. She wrote, I am leaving the Martinez family bakery to Rebecca not because she has experience running it, but because she has demonstrated the values and character necessary to preserve what it represents. The bakery is more than a business. It is a symbol of family resilience, community service, and the importance of nourishing others. Rebecca's work as a nurse shows me that she understands the importance of caring for people during their most vulnerable moments. Her financial support during my illness demonstrated generosity and responsibility. Her choice to dedicate her career to healing others reflects the same spirit of service that built our family business. I believe Rebecca will either learn to operate the bakery successfully, or will find a way to preserve its legacy while honoring the employees and community relationships that made it successful. David and Lisa have both expressed interest in the bakery primarily as a financial asset to be liquidated quickly. This approach would destroy everything the business represents. David erupted from his chair again. This is unbelievable. I've been managing Mom's affairs for 2 years. I know every aspect of the bakery's operations. Rebecca doesn't even live here. Your mother addressed that concern as well, Mr. Chen replied, turning to another page. She wrote, David's involvement in managing my affairs during my illness revealed approaches to family assets that concerned me greatly. On multiple occasions, he suggested selling the bakery quickly to raise cash for my medical expenses, despite my repeated explanation that insurance was covering most costs. He seemed more interested in liquidating assets than preserving their long-term value or meaning. Lisa supported David's suggestions and additionally proposed selling the family home and moving me to an assisted living facility, despite my clearly expressed desire to remain in my own home as long as possible. Their focus seemed to be on immediate financial convenience rather than honoring my wishes or preserving family heritage. Lisa finally found her voice. Mom needed professional care. We were trying to be practical about her safety and medical needs. Again, your mother anticipated this explanation, Mr. Chen said. She wrote, my children's suggestions about my living arrangements and asset management often came during my periods of confusion, when I was less able to advocate for my own preferences. During my clear moments, I repeatedly expressed my desire to remain in my home and preserve the bakery's operations. These wishes were often dismissed as impractical or ignored entirely. I began to understand that some family members viewed my illness as an opportunity to gain control over assets rather than as a time to honor my lifetime of work and values. This realization was deeply painful but necessary for making appropriate estate decisions. The room fell silent as the full impact of Mom's words settled over us. She had been far more aware of the dynamics around her than David and Lisa had realized. Their attempts to manipulate her vulnerable state had not gone unnoticed, and she had taken steps to protect her true wishes from their influence. Mr. Chen set down the letter and looked around the table. Elena also left specific instructions about the bakery's employees and operations. She was particularly concerned about Carmen Rodriguez and the other longtime workers who had been dismissed immediately following her death. She wrote, if the bakery is liquidated or its operations significantly changed, I want the new owner to make every effort to rehire the employees who were let go during the transition period. These workers are not just employees, they are family members who helped build the business's reputation and community relationships. David's anger was now mixed with what appeared to be genuine distress. Mom didn't understand the financial pressures we were facing. The medical bills, the insurance gaps, the daily expenses of her care. We were trying to be responsible. Actually, Mr. Chen said, consulting yet another document, Elena was quite clear about her financial situation. She had been paying all her medical expenses without difficulty and had specifically set aside funds for her end-of-life care. She was concerned that family members were exaggerating her financial stress to justify decisions she hadn't approved. He handed David a financial statement. This shows your mother's assets and expenses during her final year. As you can see, her medical costs were well within her means, and the bakery was actually profitable during that period. David stared at the financial statement, his confusion evident. But the bakery was losing money. We had to let the employees go because we couldn't afford payroll. Who told you the bakery was losing money? Mr. Chen asked pointedly. Lisa and I reviewed the books with James. He said the business was barely breaking even. Mr. Chen turned to Lisa. Your husband James was involved in reviewing your mother's financial records. Lisa looked uncomfortable. James has experience with business finances through his work at the credit union. We asked him to help us understand Mom's situation. And what was his assessment? He said the bakery was struggling and that Mom's medical expenses were overwhelming her resources. He recommended liquidating assets quickly before the situation became worse. Mr. Chen made a note on his legal pad. I see, and did you verify James's assessment with Elena's accountant, or with me as her attorney? The question hung in the air. Lisa's silence provided the answer. Elena was very specific about not allowing non-family members access to her financial information, Mr. Chen continued. She was particularly concerned about premature or unnecessary asset liquidation based on incomplete information. The implications of this exchange were becoming clear. James had somehow gained access to Mom's financial records, provided an assessment that contradicted the actual facts, and influenced David and Lisa's decisions about Mom's care and estate planning. Whether this was due to incompetence or something more deliberate remained to be determined, but it explained many of the inconsistencies in my siblings' behavior during Mom's final months. Mr. Chen returned to the will reading. Elena also left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements. She wrote, "I want all my children present at my funeral service, regardless of any family disagreements that may exist at the time of my death. I want the service to be held at St. Mary's Catholic Church with a reception afterward at the family home. I want my community friends and bakery employees to be invited and welcomed. If any family member attempts to exclude others from my funeral, or to make arrangements contrary to these wishes, they are acting against my explicit instructions and should be challenged by other family members or by my attorney." David and Lisa exchanged glances that spoke volumes. They had clearly made funeral arrangements that directly contradicted Mom's written instructions, and they now realized that their actions could be challenged legally. "Why didn't you contact us about Mom's funeral wishes?" I asked Mr. Chen directly. "I tried repeatedly to reach you, but your siblings informed me that you were unreachable due to your work location, and that you had expressed no interest in being involved in funeral arrangements." "That's not true," I said firmly. "I was never contacted by your office, and I absolutely wanted to be involved in Mom's funeral." Mr. Chen made another note. Elena anticipated the possibility of miscommunication or deliberate exclusion, which is why she prepared this additional document. He withdrew a sealed envelope from his folder. "It is a letter Elena wrote specifically about her funeral arrangements, with instructions that it be opened and read aloud, if there were any discrepancies between her stated wishes and the actual arrangements made." David's face had gone ashen. "Don't read that, please. We did our best under difficult circumstances." "Elena's instructions are quite clear about when this letter should be read," Mr. Chen replied, breaking the seal on the envelope. She wrote, "If my funeral arrangements do not include all my children, if the service is small or private contrary to my community-oriented life, or if any family member claims I requested certain exclusions, then this letter must be read to clarify my true wishes." He unfolded the letter and began reading in Mom's voice again. "I am writing this because I have become concerned that my funeral arrangements may not reflect my true desires. During my periods of confusion, I have heard family members discussing plans that would exclude certain children, or limit community participation in my service. I want to be absolutely clear. I never want any of my children excluded from my funeral. I never want a small private service that prevents my community friends from saying goodbye. I never want decisions made about my final arrangements without input from all my children. If such arrangements have been made, they were done without my consent and contrary to my explicit wishes. Any family member who claims I requested these limitations is either mistaken about my true feelings or is deliberately misrepresenting my desires." The letter continued with devastating clarity. "I have specifically instructed Mr. Chen to investigate any funeral arrangements that seem contrary to these wishes, and to ensure that my true desires are honored, even if it means challenging decisions made by well-meaning family members. My greatest fear is that family disagreements will prevent my children from coming together to honor my memory and begin healing their relationships. I hope my funeral will be an opportunity for reconciliation rather than further division." Mr. Chen set down the letter and looked directly at David and Lisa. Based on Rebecca's account of the funeral arrangements, it appears that Elena's wishes were not honored. She specifically wanted all her children present and participating, not excluded or marginalized. Lisa finally broke down, tears streaming down her face. "We thought we were protecting her memory. Rebecca hadn't been here. We were angry about her absence. We thought Mom would want the funeral to reflect who had actually been part of her life. But that wasn't your decision to make, Mr. Chen said gently but firmly. Elena left explicit instructions, precisely because she knew family emotions might interfere with her true wishes. David slumped in his chair, the fight gone out of him. "We messed up. We let our anger cloud our judgment. But Rebecca has to understand how hard it's been, watching Mom decline while she lived her life hundreds of miles away." "David?" I said quietly, speaking directly to my brother for the first time since entering the room. "I understand that my absence was painful for all of you. But I was never absent from Mom's heart or mind. I was working to position myself to come home permanently and help with her care." "You sent money," Lisa said bitterly. "But money doesn't sit with someone during chemotherapy treatments or clean up after them when they have accidents or hold their hand when they're scared and confused." "You're right," I acknowledged. I wasn't there for those intimate, difficult moments, but I was there in other ways, and Mom understood the difference between physical absence and emotional abandonment. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. Elena actually addressed this exact dynamic in another letter. She was quite concerned about the resentment building between her children and wanted to ensure that everyone understood her perspective on different types of support and sacrifice. He retrieved another document. This is Elena's letter about family contributions and sacrifices. She wrote, "I have watched my children develop resentment toward each other based on different ways of showing love and support. David and Lisa have provided physical presence and practical assistance. Rebecca has provided emotional support and financial contribution while building a career dedicated to helping others. All of these contributions have value, and none of them diminishes the others. I do not want my children competing for recognition as the most devoted or sacrificing. Each has given according to their circumstances and abilities. What troubles me is the suggestion that physical presence is the only meaningful form of family support. Rebecca's career choice required sacrifice of immediate family closeness in service of helping families in crisis across the country. This kind of service reflects values I tried to instill in all my children. David and Lisa's daily assistance required different sacrifices, including time, convenience, and emotional energy. These contributions were also valuable and appreciated. I do not want my estate decisions interpreted as favoring one type of contribution over another. Rather, I want them seen as reflecting my assessment of each child's ability to preserve and honor what our family has built together." The room fell silent as Mom's wisdom settled over our family conflict. She had understood the dynamics between us better than we understood them ourselves, and she had tried to address our resentments while making practical decisions about her legacy. Mr. Chen looked around the table. There are several additional provisions in Elena's will that we need to discuss, including specific instructions about the bakery's operations and her concerns about financial irregularities during her final months. David and Lisa both looked up sharply at the mention of financial irregularities. Elena was quite concerned about discrepancies in her bakery's financial records and some unusual financial decisions that were made on her behalf during her illness. She requested that these matters be investigated after her death. She wrote, "During my final months, I became aware that financial decisions were being made regarding the bakery's operations that I did not authorize or fully understand. Employees were dismissed, contracts were canceled, and expenses were incurred that seemed unnecessary or premature. I was told these decisions were necessary due to financial constraints, but my own review of the actual financial situation suggested otherwise. I want these decisions investigated to determine whether they were made in good faith, or whether someone took advantage of my vulnerable state." Mr. Chen looked directly at David and Lisa. Elena specifically requested that I review all financial transactions related to her care and the bakery's operations during her final year. She was particularly concerned about any involvement of non-family members in these decisions. The implications were clear, and the mention of non-family members clearly pointed toward James's involvement in the financial assessments that had led to the bakery's closure and employee dismissals. What had started as a routine will reading was becoming an investigation into potential financial manipulation during Mom's vulnerable final months. The scope of deception was broader than I had imagined, and the consequences would extend far beyond simple inheritance disputes. The weight of Mr. Chen's words hung heavily in the air as he reached for another folder, this one marked with red tabs indicating its sensitive nature. Elena asked me to conduct a preliminary investigation into the financial irregularities she suspected, and what I discovered was quite troubling, he said, his professional demeanor taking on a more serious tone. Before we continue with the remaining will provisions, I think it's important that all of you understand the scope of what occurred during Elena's final months. He opened the folder and withdrew a series of bank statements and financial documents. Elena maintained meticulous records throughout her life, and she noticed discrepancies between her understanding of the bakery's financial situation and the reports she was receiving from family members. During one of her clear periods in February, she asked me to secretly audit the business accounts. David's hands were visibly trembling now, and Lisa had gone completely pale. The confident siblings who had dismissed me so cruelly at Mom's funeral were beginning to look like cornered animals, as the truth of their actions was systematically exposed. What I found, Mr. Chen continued, was a pattern of financial decisions that benefited certain individuals, while being justified to Elena as necessary emergency measures. For example, the bakery's longtime supplier contracts were canceled and replaced with more expensive alternatives. When I investigated, I discovered that the new suppliers were companies with direct connections to James Cooper. Lisa gasped audibly. That's impossible. James was just trying to help find better deals. Actually, Mr. Chen replied, consulting his notes. James' credit union had business relationships with these suppliers, and he received referral fees for each new account he established. So while Elena was being told that these changes would save money, they were actually increasing costs while generating income for James. The picture was becoming clearer. James had used his access to Mom's financial information to redirect the bakery's business toward companies that would benefit him personally, all while convincing David and Lisa that these changes were necessary cost-saving measures. The employee dismissals present an even more troubling pattern, Mr. Chen continued. Elena was told that layoffs were necessary due to declining revenues, but the actual financial records show that the bakery was profitable throughout this period. The payroll savings from the dismissals were redirected to unnecessary equipment purchases and facility modifications, many of which were handled by companies connected to James's business network. David finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. We trusted James. He said he was helping us navigate Mom's financial crisis. He showed us projections and cash flow analyses that proved the business was failing. Those projections were based on artificially inflated expenses and deliberately understated revenues, Mr. Chen explained. James had access to Elena's accounts through your authorization, and he was able to manipulate the numbers to support whatever narrative served his purposes. Lisa was crying openly now, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. I don't understand. Why would James do this? We're married. We share everything. If he was making money from these arrangements, I would have benefited too. That's where the investigation becomes even more concerning, Mr. Chen said grimly. James wasn't just manipulating Elena's finances for small referral fees. He was positioning himself to acquire the bakery's assets at significantly below market value, through a complex scheme involving debt manipulation and forced liquidation. He withdrew another document from the folder. 3 weeks before Elena's death, James approached a commercial real estate investment group about purchasing the bakery building and equipment. The purchase price he negotiated was approximately 60% of the actual market value, justified by claims that the business was failing and the assets needed to be liquidated quickly. The room felt like it was spinning as the full scope of James's deception became clear. He hadn't just been skimming small amounts from Mom's business, he had been systematically undermining its operations to create an artificial crisis that would allow him to acquire valuable assets at a fraction of their worth. How is this possible? I asked, struggling to process the magnitude of the betrayal. How could he make these arrangements without Mom's knowledge or consent? James convinced David and Lisa that Elena was too confused to make sound financial decisions, and that they needed to act quickly to preserve what assets they could, Mr. Chen explained. He presented himself as a financial expert who could guide them through the crisis, and they granted him power of attorney over certain business matters. David's face was now buried in his hands. He said it was temporary, just to handle the immediate emergency. He said Mom would thank us later for protecting her from making emotional decisions that would destroy everything she'd built. The power of attorney documents that James prepared were much broader than you realized, Mr. Chen continued. They gave him authority, not just to manage immediate expenses, but to make fundamental changes to the business structure, including asset sales and contract modifications. Lisa looked up through her tears. But we reviewed everything with him. He explained every decision. He showed us how the changes would help Mom. James is quite skilled at financial manipulation, Mr. Chen acknowledged. He presented information in ways that supported his narrative, while concealing the aspects that would have revealed his true motivations. For example, when he showed you declining revenue projections, he failed to mention that the decline was caused by the supplier changes he had recommended. The attorney turned to a fresh page in his notes. Elena became suspicious when she noticed that longtime customers were complaining about changes in product quality and availability. During one of her clear periods, she asked Maria to secretly contact several customers to understand their concerns. What did she discover? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer would be devastating. The new suppliers James had arranged were providing inferior ingredients at higher costs. Customer favorites were being discontinued, not because of profitability issues, but because the new suppliers didn't carry traditional Mexican baking ingredients. The bakery was losing its cultural identity and community connection, all in service of generating fees for James. Mr. Chen paused to let this information sink in before continuing. Elena also discovered that James had been approaching the bakery's commercial landlord about potential lease modifications that would allow subleasing portions of the space to other businesses. This would have fundamentally changed the character of the bakery while generating additional income streams that Elena had never approved. The systematic nature of James's scheme was breathtaking in its audacity. He had identified every aspect of Mom's business that could be monetized or manipulated, then convinced my siblings that these changes were necessary for survival, while positioning himself to profit from each modification. Why didn't Mom confront David and Lisa directly about what she was discovering? I asked. Elena tried several times, Mr. Chen replied, but she faced two significant obstacles. First, her periods of clarity were becoming less frequent and shorter in duration, so she had limited opportunities for complex discussions. Second, when she did try to raise concerns, David and Lisa would often dismiss her questions as confusion or anxiety related to her condition. He consulted another document. Elena wrote in her notes, "When I try to discuss my concerns about the business changes, my children assume I'm confused and reassure me that everything is being handled properly. They seem to believe that questioning these decisions is evidence of my declining mental state, rather than legitimate business concerns." The tragic irony was becoming clear. Mom's Alzheimer's diagnosis had been weaponized against her, used to dismiss her valid concerns and prevent her from protecting her own interests. David and Lisa, believing they were acting in her best interests, had become enablers of the very deception they thought they were preventing. Elena's final strategy was to document everything secretly and ensure that the truth would be revealed after her death, Mr. Chen explained. She couldn't stop the immediate manipulation, but she could ensure that justice would eventually be served. She worked with Maria to photograph financial documents and record conversations during periods when James thought Elena was too confused to understand what was being discussed. She also asked me to prepare legal documents that would expose the fraud and provide remedies for the family. Chen opened another folder, this one containing photographs and audio equipment. Elena left specific instructions about how to use this evidence to recover stolen assets and hold the responsible parties accountable. David looked up from his hands, his face haggard with guilt and realization. "We never meant for any of this to happen. We were trying to protect Mom, to make sure she got the care she needed, without worrying about financial stress." "Your intentions were good," Mr. Chen acknowledged, but Elena understood that good intentions don't excuse the results of those actions. She was particularly concerned about the impact on her employees and the community relationships that took decades to build. Lisa wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. "What can we do now? Can we fix any of this? Can we undo the damage James caused?" Elena anticipated that question, Mr. Chen replied, and she left detailed instructions for restoration and recovery. However, implementing her plans will require cooperation from all family members, and potentially criminal prosecution of James for fraud and elder abuse. The mention of criminal prosecution caused Lisa to break down completely. The realization that her husband faced potential jail time for his systematic exploitation of her dying mother was clearly overwhelming. Elena's primary concern was protecting the family's legacy and ensuring that the people who depended on the bakery weren't permanently harmed by James's actions, Mr. Chen continued. She believed that family healing was possible if everyone was willing to face the truth and work toward genuine solutions. He withdrew Elena's final letter from the folder. "This is Elena's message about forgiveness and restoration." She wrote, "If my investigation reveals that family members were deceived rather than complicit in financial wrongdoing, I want them to know that forgiveness is possible. Mistakes made in good faith, even serious ones, can be corrected if people are willing to take responsibility and make amends. However, I draw a distinction between family members who were manipulated and non-family members who deliberately exploited my vulnerability for personal gain. The latter group must face full legal consequences for their actions. My hope is that exposing this deception will not destroy family relationships but will create an opportunity for honest communication and genuine partnership in preserving what we built together." Mr. Chen looked around the table at each of us. Elena left specific instructions for each family member about how to participate in the restoration process. "David and Lisa, she wanted you to understand that your mistakes came from love and concern, even though the results were harmful. She believed you could learn from this experience and become better guardians of family interests. Rebecca, Elena wanted you to know that your inheritance comes with the responsibility of healing both the business and the family relationships that were damaged during her illness. She believed your professional experience with families in crisis would prepare you for this challenge." The attorney opened Elena's will to a section marked with multiple bookmarks. The specific provisions for restoration are quite detailed. Elena established a family reconciliation fund using portions of her estate to help repair the damage caused by James's manipulation. First, she allocated $50,000 specifically for rehiring the bakery employees who were dismissed during her illness, including back pay for the time they were unemployed due to circumstances beyond their control. Second, she established a legal fund to pursue criminal charges against James and civil recovery of all assets that were diverted from their intended purposes. This includes not just the direct financial losses but also the opportunity costs of the business relationships that were damaged. Third, she created a family counseling fund to help her children work through the emotional damage caused by this deception and learn to trust each other again. She believed that professional mediation would be necessary to rebuild healthy family dynamics. David looked up with something resembling hope for the first time since the meeting began. Mom really believed we could fix this, even after everything that happened. Elena was quite clear about her belief in redemption and second chances, Mr. Chen confirmed. But she also emphasized that restoration requires complete honesty and genuine commitment to change. She wasn't offering easy forgiveness. She was offering an opportunity to earn forgiveness through actions. Lisa had stopped crying and was listening intently. What would we need to do? What did Mom want from us specifically? Mr. Chen turned to a marked page in the will. Elena left detailed requirements for each family member who wanted to participate in the restoration process. David, she wanted you to acknowledge publicly that the funeral arrangements did not reflect her wishes and to take responsibility for excluding Rebecca contrary to Elena's explicit instructions. She also wanted you to cooperate fully with the investigation into James's financial manipulation, including providing testimony and documentation even if it's embarrassing or legally complicated for your family. Lisa, Elena wanted you to understand that your husband's actions constituted elder abuse and fraud and that protecting him from consequences would be equivalent to enabling further victimization of vulnerable people. She wanted you to prioritize justice over marital loyalty in this situation. She also wanted you to take an active role in rebuilding the bakery's community relationships and restoring its cultural authenticity, since you were present during the period when these connections were damaged. Mr. Chen turned to me. Rebecca, Elena's expectations for you are perhaps the most challenging. She wanted you to return to Riverside permanently and take active management of the bakery, learning the business from the ground up while rebuilding the employee relationships and community connections that were damaged. She also wanted you to find a way to include David and Lisa in the restoration process, giving them opportunities to contribute meaningfully while maintaining appropriate boundaries to prevent future manipulation. Most importantly, she wanted you to balance justice with mercy, pursuing legal remedies against James while offering genuine forgiveness to family members who were deceived by his schemes. The scope of Mom's expectations was daunting but also inspiring. She had created a roadmap not just for financial restoration but for genuine family healing based on truth, accountability, and mutual commitment to shared values. There's one more provision I need to discuss, Mr. Chen said, his tone becoming even more serious. Elena was concerned that James might attempt to manipulate or intimidate family members to prevent full exposure of his crimes. She left specific instructions about protecting everyone involved in the restoration process. He opened a sealed envelope marked security provisions. Elena arranged for private security and legal protection for family members who cooperate with the investigation. She understood that exposing financial fraud often involves personal risk, especially when significant assets are at stake. She also documented threats and intimidation attempts that occurred during her final months, including pressure from James to change her will and exclude certain family members from inheritance. This documentation will be crucial for establishing a pattern of manipulation and abuse. The revelation that Mom had faced actual threats during her vulnerable final months was devastating. The woman who had spent her life nurturing and protecting others had been victimized by someone who was supposed to be caring for her family. Elena left a recording from her final week. Mr. Chen said quietly. She specifically asked that it be played during this meeting so that everyone could hear her state of mind and her final wishes in her own voice. He activated a small digital recorder and suddenly Mom's voice filled the conference room, weak but unmistakably clear and determined. My dear children, if you are hearing this recording, then I have passed away and Mr. Chen is sharing my final thoughts with you. I want you to know that despite the difficulties of recent months, I am at peace with my decisions and confident in my love for each of you. David and Lisa, I know you feel hurt and confused by the provisions of my will. Please understand that I am not punishing you for being deceived by James. I am trying to protect our family from further manipulation while giving you opportunities to demonstrate growth and healing. Rebecca, I am entrusting you with our family's legacy not because you are perfect but because your life experiences have prepared you to value relationships over financial gain and to fight for people who cannot fight for themselves. To all my children, I want you to remember that our family's strength has always come from supporting each other through difficult times. This situation is a test of whether you can choose love and truth over pride and convenience. The person who has harmed our family is not one of my children. James exploited my illness and your good intentions to steal from people I love. He must face consequences for his actions, but that doesn't mean our family cannot heal and grow stronger. I believe in each of you. I believe in your capacity for forgiveness, growth, and genuine partnership. Use this crisis as an opportunity to become the family I always hoped you could be. The recording ended, leaving us all in emotional silence. Mom's voice had carried such clarity and strength that it was impossible to doubt her mental competence when these decisions were made. Mr. Chen turned off the recorder and looked around the table. Elena asked me to give each of you time to process this information before making any decisions about participating in the restoration process. However, she was quite clear that time is of the essence for protecting the bakery's assets and preventing James from further manipulating the situation. The legal actions against James need to begin immediately, and the bakery's operations need to be restored before more community relationships are permanently damaged. Elena estimated that we have perhaps 60 days to begin meaningful restoration before the damage becomes irreversible. David straightened in his chair, some of his old determination returning. What do we need to do first? How do we start fixing this mess? The first step is filing criminal complaints against James with both local police and federal authorities, since his schemes involved interstate financial transactions, Mr. Chen explained. Elena prepared comprehensive documentation to support these charges, but family cooperation will be essential for successful prosecution. The second step is freezing James's assets and preventing him from transferring or hiding any proceeds from his manipulation. Elena worked with financial investigators to identify accounts and properties that may contain stolen funds. The third step is beginning immediate restoration of the bakery's operations, including rehiring key employees and re-establishing relationships with traditional suppliers and customers. Lisa took a deep breath before speaking. Mr. Chen, I need to ask directly, if we pursue criminal charges against James, what kind of sentence is he looking at? Given the scope of the elder abuse and financial fraud, James could face significant federal prison time, possibly 10 to 20 years depending on the total amount involved in his cooperation with authorities. Mr. Chen replied honestly. Elena understood that this would be difficult for you, Lisa, but she believed that protecting other vulnerable people from similar exploitation was more important than preserving your marriage to someone who would commit these crimes. The choice facing Lisa was stark: stand by her husband and become complicit in his continued freedom to harm others, or cooperate with justice and face the personal consequences of his criminal behavior. I need time to think, Lisa said quietly. This is more than I can process right now. Elena anticipated that reaction, Mr. Chen replied, which is why she prepared this final provision. He withdrew one last document from the folder. Elena left each of you a personal letter to be read privately when you're ready to make your final decision about participating in the restoration process. These letters contain her most personal thoughts about your individual situations and the challenges you'll face. She asked that you read these letters tonight and contact me tomorrow with your decisions. The legal and financial processes cannot wait much longer, but she wanted to give you one final opportunity to hear her thoughts privately before committing to this difficult path. As Mr. Chen handed each of us our individual letters, I realized that Mom's death had not ended her active role in our family's life. Through careful planning and profound love, she had created an opportunity for justice, healing, and restoration that would continue long after her physical presence was gone. The question now was whether her children would prove worthy of the faith she had placed in us, or whether James's manipulation would succeed in destroying the family legacy she had spent her lifetime building. That evening, I sat alone in my childhood bedroom at Mom's house on Maple Street, holding her final letter in my trembling hands. The familiar surroundings felt both comforting and surreal after everything that had been revealed during the will reading. The pale yellow walls still bore faint marks where my teenage posters had hung, and Mom's presence seemed to linger in every corner of the room where she had tucked me in countless times as a child. I carefully opened the envelope marked with my name in Mom's distinctive handwriting. The letter inside was longer than the others Mr. Chen had read aloud, written on several sheets of her personal stationery decorated with small roses around the borders. My dearest Rebecca, it began, by now you understand the full scope of what James did to our family and the difficult position your siblings found themselves in during my final months. I want you to know that my decision to entrust you with the family's legacy was not made lightly or out of favoritism but from a deep understanding of your character and capabilities. You have spent your career helping families navigate their most challenging moments, learning to balance compassion with practical decision-making, understanding that healing often requires difficult choices. These skills will serve you well in the months ahead as you work to restore what was damaged and rebuild what was broken. David and Lisa are good people who made mistakes under extraordinary pressure. They trusted someone who exploited their love for me and their desire to protect me. Their errors came from inexperience and manipulation, not from malicious intent. I believe they can learn from this experience and become valuable partners in preserving our family's legacy. However, the path forward will not be easy. James will likely attempt to manipulate the situation further, possibly using Lisa's emotional attachment to him or David's guilt about the funeral arrangements. You must be prepared for continued deception and possibly escalated pressure as the legal consequences become real. I have provided you with all the tools necessary to seek justice and achieve restoration, but success will depend on your ability to lead your siblings toward truth and healing rather than allowing them to retreat into denial or self-protection. The letter continued with specific guidance about managing the bakery's restoration. Mom had included detailed notes about key employees, important suppliers, and community relationships that would need immediate attention. She had even provided contact information for Carmen Rodriguez and other former workers, along with suggestions for approaching them about returning to their positions. Carmen will be skeptical about any overtures from the family, Mom wrote. She was deeply hurt by her sudden dismissal after 15 years of loyal service. You will need to acknowledge the injustice she experienced and demonstrate through actions, not just words, that the Martinez family values loyalty and treats employees with dignity. The community relationships will be more challenging to rebuild. Many customers have already found alternative sources for their baking needs, and they may be reluctant to trust that the quality and cultural authenticity they valued will be restored. You will need to prove that the bakery's identity has been preserved despite the recent changes. Mom had also included practical advice about the business operations that revealed just how closely she had been monitoring the situation despite her illness. James convinced David and Lisa that certain traditional recipes were too expensive to maintain, but the truth is that our authentic ingredients are what distinguished us from commercial bakeries. Returning to our original suppliers and recipes should be your first priority. The equipment that James had removed or replaced should be recovered if possible. Much of it has sentimental value beyond its practical function, including the large mixer that belonged to your grandmother and the display cases that your father helped me install when we first expanded the shop. The personal portion of Mom's letter was the most difficult to read. Rebecca, I know you carry guilt about not being physically present during my final months. I want you to understand that your absence was not abandonment but sacrifice in service of values I deeply admire. Your work helping other families during medical crises brought me pride and comfort even when I missed your presence. The daily phone calls we shared were precious to me. Your voice connecting me to the wider world, your stories about patients and their families, your consistent concern for my well-being. These things meant more to me than you may realize. Physical presence is valuable, but emotional connection transcends distance. Do not allow David and Lisa's anger about your absence to undermine your confidence in your worthiness to inherit this responsibility. They spoke from pain and exhaustion, not from objective assessment of your contributions or capabilities. Mom's letter also addressed the emotional challenges ahead. Rebuilding trust with your siblings will require patience and consistent demonstration of your commitment to fairness and inclusion. They will be watching for signs that you intend to exclude them from meaningful participation in the family business and legacy. At the same time, you must establish clear boundaries to prevent future manipulation. The power to make final decisions must rest with you, but the wisdom to include others' perspectives and expertise will strengthen those decisions. James may attempt to use Lisa's emotional attachment to him to influence family decisions or gain access to information about the legal proceedings. You must be prepared for the possibility that Lisa may initially choose loyalty to her husband over loyalty to the family. This would be devastating but not necessarily permanent if she eventually recognizes the full truth of his actions. The final section of Mom's letter contained her deepest hopes for the family's future. I envision a restored Martinez family bakery that serves as a symbol of resilience and redemption, showing our community that families can overcome betrayal and manipulation through commitment to truth and justice. I see David and Lisa finding ways to contribute meaningfully to the business operations, using their skills and experience while accepting your leadership and the boundaries necessary to prevent future exploitation. I imagine new traditions being established that honor our heritage while adapting to changing community needs, ensuring that the bakery remains relevant and valuable for future generations. Most importantly, I hope that working together to overcome this crisis will create stronger bonds between you and your siblings than existed before. Shared struggle and shared commitment to justice can forge relationships deeper than those based on convenience or obligation. Mom concluded her letter with words that brought tears to my eyes. You have always been my most determined child, the one who would not accept injustice or give up when facing obstacles. These qualities sometimes created challenges when you were young, but they will serve you well in the difficult work ahead. I am proud of the woman you have become and confident in your ability to honor our family's values while adapting them to new circumstances. Trust your instincts, seek wisdom from people you respect, and remember that true strength comes not from avoiding mistakes but from learning from them and helping others do the same. I love you deeply and will be watching over you as you navigate the challenges ahead. You are not alone in this responsibility, and you have everything you need to succeed. I set down the letter and wept for the mother I had lost and for the family relationships that had been damaged by deception and manipulation. But I also felt a growing sense of purpose and determination. Mom had not just left me an inheritance, she had given me a mission that could honor her memory while healing the wounds that had divided our family. The next morning, I called Mr. Chen to confirm my commitment to pursuing the restoration process exactly as Mom had outlined. Within hours, he had filed the criminal complaints against James and initiated asset freezing procedures that would prevent him from hiding or transferring any stolen funds. David called me that afternoon, his voice heavy with emotion. Rebecca, I read Mom's letter. I understand now how badly Lisa and I misjudged the situation, and I want to make things right. I'll cooperate fully with the investigation, and I'll publicly acknowledge that the funeral arrangements were wrong. I can't undo the pain we caused you at what should have been a time for grieving together, but I want to earn your forgiveness and find a way to be part of rebuilding what we lost. Lisa's call came that evening, and her voice was filled with anguish. Rebecca, I've been married to a stranger. The man I thought I knew would never steal from a dying woman or manipulate her family during their most vulnerable time. I don't know how I missed the signs or how I became complicit in his schemes. I want to cooperate with the prosecution, but I'm terrified about what this means for my future. James was my whole life outside of family, and now I discover that our entire relationship was built on lies and exploitation. Can you forgive me for excluding you from Mom's funeral? Can you trust me to be part of the restoration even though I was so easily deceived? Within a week, the criminal investigation had uncovered evidence that exceeded even Mom's suspicions about the scope of James's crimes. Federal agents discovered that he had been operating similar schemes targeting elderly clients of his credit union, using his position of trust to gain access to financial information and then manipulating family members into making decisions that benefited his network of business associates. The total amount of money James had stolen or diverted from Mom's estate alone was over $200,000, funds that had been cleverly hidden through a complex network of shell companies and fraudulent contracts. The evidence Mom had gathered was crucial for establishing the timeline and methods of his deception. James was arrested at his office on a Tuesday morning, charged with elder abuse, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The local news coverage was extensive, and the story resonated throughout our community as people recognized how easily they might have been similarly victimized. Lisa filed for divorce immediately after James's arrest, a decision that required enormous courage given her emotional attachment to him and her financial dependence on his income. She moved back into Mom's house temporarily while we worked together to restore the bakery operations. The first employee I contacted was Carmen Rodriguez, the 15-year veteran baker who had been dismissed during Mom's illness. I met her at a small cafe downtown, nervous about how she would receive my apology and offer of reinstatement. Carmen was a dignified woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes that reflected both wisdom and hurt. When I explained what we had discovered about James's manipulation and Mom's true wishes regarding the employee dismissals, she listened without interruption. Your mother was like family to me, Carmen said quietly when I finished. When I was going through my divorce, she let me work extra hours to support my children. When my son was in the hospital, she paid for shifts I couldn't work and never asked for the money back. Being dismissed without explanation or severance after 15 years felt like betrayal, not just of my loyalty but of everything I thought the Martinez family represented. I didn't understand how Elena could have approved such treatment. But I also couldn't reconcile that decision with the woman I had known for so many years. Something felt wrong about the whole situation, but I didn't know how to question it without seeming disrespectful to a grieving family. I offered Carmen her position back with full back pay for the months she had been unemployed, along with a formal apology from the family and assurance that such treatment would never happen again. Her acceptance was conditional on seeing genuine changes in how the business was operated and employees were treated. I want to come back, she said, but I need to see that the Martinez family has learned from this experience. I need to know that employees will be consulted about changes that affect them and that loyalty will be valued and protected. Over the following weeks, Carmen became my most valuable ally in restoring the bakery's operations and community relationships. Her knowledge of the traditional recipes and baking techniques was encyclopedic, and her relationships with longtime customers were crucial for rebuilding trust and credibility. David proved surprisingly helpful in the practical aspects of restoration. His sales background made him effective at renegotiating supplier contracts and establishing new business relationships. He also took responsibility for communicating with customers and community members about the changes that had occurred, and our commitment to restoring quality and authenticity. I need to be part of fixing this, he told me during one of our planning sessions. I enabled James's schemes through my naivety and poor judgment. I owe it to Mom's memory and to everyone who was hurt by my mistakes to work as hard as possible to make things right. Lisa's contributions were more complex but equally valuable. Her experience with community organizations and local politics helped us navigate the bureaucratic aspects of restoring business licenses and permits that had been affected by James's manipulations. She also took on the emotionally difficult task of rebuilding relationships with former employees and explaining the family's commitment to justice and accountability. I was James's wife, which makes me complicit in people's minds even though I was deceived, she acknowledged. I have to prove through actions that I'm committed to truth and justice over personal convenience. It's the only way to earn back the trust that was lost. The bakery's grand reopening occurred 3 months after Mom's death, on what would have been her 68th birthday. The community response exceeded our most optimistic expectations. Customers who had been forced to find alternatives during the closure returned eagerly, expressing relief that the authentic Martinez family recipes and warm customer service had been preserved. Carmen had worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail reflected Mom's standards and values. The display cases were filled with the traditional Mexican pastries that had made the bakery famous, prepared using the original recipes and authentic ingredients that James had tried to replace with cheaper alternatives. Local newspaper coverage of the reopening focused on the family's resilience and commitment to justice, portraying our experience as a cautionary tale about elder abuse, while celebrating the positive outcome of our efforts to seek accountability and restoration. James's criminal trial became a significant news story that raised awareness about financial exploitation of elderly people and the sophisticated methods used by white-collar criminals to manipulate vulnerable families. His conviction on all charges resulted in a 15-year federal prison sentence and restitution orders that recovered most of the stolen funds. More importantly, the trial led to policy changes at the credit union where James had worked and increased scrutiny of financial advisors who gain access to elderly clients' personal information. Mom's careful documentation of his crimes helped establish legal precedents that would protect other families from similar exploitation. The financial recovery allowed us not only to fully restore the bakery's operations but also to expand in ways that honored Mom's vision for community service. We established a program providing free baked goods for community events and charitable organizations, continuing the tradition of generosity that had always distinguished the Martinez family business. David and Lisa both found meaningful roles in the expanded operations. David managed customer relations and business development, using his sales skills to build relationships with new wholesale customers and catering clients. Lisa handled administrative functions and community outreach, organizing events and partnerships that strengthened the bakery's connections to local organizations. Our working relationship evolved into something stronger than the family bonds we had shared before Mom's illness. Having faced crisis together and chosen truth over convenience, we developed trust based on shared values rather than mere blood relationship. The most profound change was in our understanding of Mom's wisdom and foresight. Her decision to document James's crimes and prepare for legal remedies had not only protected the family's assets, but had created an opportunity for genuine healing and growth. She knew that exposing the truth would be painful but necessary, Lisa reflected during one of our family dinners 6 months after the reopening. She could have tried to handle everything quietly to avoid embarrassment or family conflict, but she chose justice over peace. And she gave us a roadmap for restoration that required us to confront our own mistakes and grow beyond them. David added, "She didn't just leave us money or property, she left us a chance to become better people." The Martinez family bakery today employs 12 people and serves customers throughout the region. Carmen Rodriguez is now the head baker and part owner, a recognition of her loyalty and expertise that Mom would have deeply appreciated. The business has expanded to include catering services and wholesale distribution while maintaining its identity
As a community gathering place and cultural anchor, the legal victory against James led to speaking opportunities about elder abuse prevention and family financial protection. I found myself addressing community groups and professional organizations about the warning signs of financial manipulation and the importance of maintaining open communication during family health crises. These speaking engagements connected my nursing background with the family business in unexpected ways, as I was able to help other families navigate similar challenges while building awareness about the vulnerability of elderly people to sophisticated financial predators. David met his future wife at one of these community presentations. Sarah Thompson was a social worker specializing in elder abuse prevention, and their shared commitment to protecting vulnerable people became the foundation of a relationship that has brought new stability and purpose to his life. Lisa eventually remarried as well, to a teacher named Michael Chen who understood her experience with betrayal and supported her commitment to transparency and honesty in all relationships. Their partnership demonstrated that it was possible to rebuild trust and love after experiencing profound deception. The family home on Maple Street became a gathering place again, hosting Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations that would have made Mom proud. The walls are once again covered with family photographs, including pictures of the bakery's reopening and the community events we host throughout the year. Most importantly, we learned to honor Mom's memory not just through business success but through the values and relationships she had prioritized throughout her life. Her legacy is not just the bakery or the financial assets she left behind, but the example she set of fighting for truth and justice even when facing personal vulnerability and family pressure. The inscription we placed on Mom's gravestone at Pinewood Cemetery reads, "Elena Martinez, beloved mother, businesswoman, and fighter for truth." Her courage in protecting her family's legacy continues to inspire justice and healing. Every year on the anniversary of her death, we gather at the gravestone to share updates about the bakery, our families, and the community work that continues her mission of service and protection. These visits remind us that her influence extends far beyond the business she built or the money she left behind. Mom's greatest gift to us was not the inheritance itself, but the opportunity to prove worthy of her faith in our capacity for growth, healing, and service to others. By choosing truth over convenience and justice over peace, she created a legacy that will continue to influence our family and community for generations to come. The story of our family's restoration from betrayal and manipulation has become part of the Martinez family bakery's identity, a reminder that resilience and commitment to truth can overcome even sophisticated deception and family division. Customers often comment that they can taste the authenticity and care that went into rebuilding what was nearly lost, that the pastries carry the flavor of hard-won wisdom and renewed commitment to excellence. 2 years after James's conviction, I stood in the Martinez family bakery at 5 in the morning, just as Mom had done for over 2 decades, preparing for another day of serving our community. The familiar sounds of mixing bowls and ovens preheating filled the space with a rhythm that connected me to generations of women in my family who had risen before dawn to create something nourishing for others. The early morning hours had become my favorite time in the bakery, when the day held infinite possibility and the work felt like meditation rather than labor. Carmen arrived at 5:30 as she had every weekday for the past 18 months since her return, bringing with her the expertise and institutional memory that no amount of training could have replaced. "Morning, Misha," she greeted me using the same affectionate term she had once used with Mom. "The special orders for the Rodriguez wedding are ready for final decorating, and I've got the conchas rising for the morning rush." Our working relationship had evolved into something precious and irreplaceable. Carmen had become my mentor in the technical aspects of baking while I handled the business management and community relations that kept the operation thriving. Together we had not only restored the bakery's reputation but elevated it beyond what it had achieved even during Mom's peak years. The transformation wasn't just in our output or profitability, though both had exceeded our most optimistic projections. The real change was in the bakery's role in the community and the relationships we had built with customers, suppliers, and employees. We had become a gathering place for celebrations and comfort during difficult times, exactly as Mom had envisioned when she first opened the business. David arrived at 7, as had become his routine since taking on expanded responsibilities for customer relations and special events. His transformation over the past 2 years had been remarkable to witness. The man who had once been easily manipulated by James's financial schemes had developed into a shrewd business advocate who protected the bakery's interests while building genuine relationships with clients and community partners. The mayor's office called yesterday about catering the holiday festival, he reported while helping Carmen arrange the morning's fresh pastries in the display cases. They want to expand our role from just desserts to include some of the breakfast items we've been developing. That's a significant opportunity, I replied, mentally calculating the logistics and staffing requirements. But we'll need to make sure we can handle the volume without compromising quality on our regular orders. This kind of strategic thinking had become second nature for all of us as we balanced growth opportunities with our commitment to excellence and authenticity. Every decision was filtered through questions about sustainability, community impact, and alignment with the values Mom had instilled in the business. Lisa joined us at 8, having dropped her children off at school before beginning her day managing the bakery's administrative functions and community outreach programs. Her morning routine included reviewing the previous day's sales figures, checking inventory levels, and coordinating with local organizations about upcoming events and charitable contributions. The food bank coordinator called to thank us for yesterday's donation, she reported, settling into the office space we had created in the back of the building. They said our day-old bread and pastries are helping them serve 30% more families than they could with their previous resources. Our charitable giving program had grown organically from Mom's tradition of informal generosity into a structured initiative that provided significant support to local food assistance programs. Rather than discarding unsold items at the end of each day, we partnered with 3 different community organizations to ensure that surplus food reached families in need. The program had also created unexpected marketing benefits, as recipients often became customers when their circumstances improved, and their word-of-mouth recommendations brought new clients who valued businesses that demonstrated social responsibility. Maria Santos stopped by during the morning rush, as she did several times each week since retiring from her caregiving work. Her relationship with our family had evolved into something between friendship and extended family membership, and her presence in the bakery brought comfort to all of us who missed Mom's daily involvement in the operations. Elena would be so proud of what you've accomplished, Maria told me while accepting her usual cup of coffee and fresh concha. The spirit of this place is exactly what she hoped to preserve, but stronger and more connected to the community than it was even before. Maria's observations carried special weight because she had known Mom during both her healthiest and most vulnerable periods. Her validation that we had successfully honored Mom's vision while adapting to new circumstances meant more than any business award or newspaper recognition we had received. The lunch crowd brought a steady stream of familiar faces, longtime customers whose loyalty had sustained the business through its difficult period and whose enthusiastic support had fueled its restoration. Mrs. Patterson, who had been buying her grandchildren's birthday cakes from us for 15 years, stopped to share news about her latest great-grandchild and to place an order for another celebration cake. "You know, dear," she told me while reviewing cake decoration options, "there was a time when I thought we might lose this place forever. When it closed during your mother's illness, it felt like we were losing part of our neighborhood's heart. Having it back, and seeing how much better it's become, gives me hope that good things can survive even when they seem lost." These kinds of conversations happen daily, reminders that the bakery's significance extended far beyond its role as a business. We had become a symbol of resilience and renewal for people who had watched our family's struggle and recovery with invested interest and emotional support. The afternoon brought the usual mix of special order consultations, supply deliveries, and administrative tasks that kept the operation running smoothly. I spent an hour with a young couple planning their wedding, helping them design a cake that would reflect their cultural heritage while accommodating dietary restrictions for several family members. This kind of personalized service had become one of our distinguishing characteristics, setting us apart from larger commercial bakeries that couldn't afford the time for individual consultation and custom design. Our willingness to work with customers' specific needs and cultural preferences had attracted clients from throughout the region who valued authenticity and personal attention. David handled a challenging conversation with a potential wholesale client who wanted to feature our products in their upscale market but insisted on packaging and labeling changes that would have compromised our cultural identity. His polite but firm refusal demonstrated the business judgment and value commitment that had replaced his previous susceptibility to financial pressure. They offered a significant volume contract, he explained after the meeting, but their requirements would have forced us to present our products as generic Mexican-style pastries rather than authentic Martinez family recipes. Mom taught us that some opportunities aren't worth pursuing if they require abandoning what makes us special. Lisa spent the afternoon coordinating with the high school's business club, which had requested a tour and presentation about family entrepreneurship and community service. These educational initiatives had become an important part of our community role, sharing Mom's story and our family's experience with young people who were developing their own ideas about business ethics and social responsibility. 3 of the students who visited last month have started their own small businesses. Lisa reported proudly. One is making jewelry, another is offering tutoring services, and the third has started a dog walking business. They all said our discussion about combining profit with community service influenced their approach to their ventures. Evening brought the quiet tasks of cleaning, inventory, and preparation for the next day's production. These hours had become opportunities for reflection and planning, times when the 3 of us could discuss challenges, celebrate successes, and refine our approach to ongoing improvements. I've been thinking about Mom's dream of expanding into catering more systematically, I said while wiping down the display cases. Not just special events, but regular contracts with businesses and schools that want authentic, high-quality food service. The infrastructure investment would be significant, David observed, but the potential for steady revenue and community impact could justify the costs. We'd need to be careful about maintaining quality while scaling up production. And we'd want to make sure any expansion preserves the personal relationships and cultural authenticity that distinguish us from corporate food service. Lisa added, growth for its own sake was part of what made us vulnerable to James's manipulation in the first place. Our ability to have these strategic conversations reflected the maturity and trust that had developed between us through shared crisis and collaborative restoration. We had learned to balance individual perspectives with collective decision-making, ensuring that major choices reflected genuine consensus rather than mere agreement to avoid conflict. The evening's final task was reviewing the day's financial results and updating the records that had become crucial for both business management and legal compliance. The transparency and documentation practices we had implemented after James's conviction served multiple purposes: protecting against future manipulation, demonstrating accountability to employees and community partners, and providing the data necessary for informed decision-making. Revenue is up 12% from last month, and our profit margins are holding steady despite the increased costs for authentic ingredients. Lisa reported from her review of the daily figures. The community support and word-of-mouth marketing continue to drive growth without requiring significant advertising expenses. Financial stability had been one of our primary concerns during the restoration process, but the combination of restored quality, expanded services, and strengthened community relationships had created sustainable prosperity that exceeded Mom's most optimistic projections. The drive home to Mom's house on Maple Street had become a time for transition between my public role as business owner and community leader, and my private life as someone still processing grief and building new family relationships. The house itself had been transformed through careful restoration and the addition of new memories that honored the past while embracing the present. David and Lisa both lived nearby now, having chosen to remain close to the family business and to each other rather than pursuing opportunities that would have scattered us geographically. Their marriages had brought new family members, who understood and supported our commitment to the bakery and the values it represented. Sunday dinners at the house had become weekly traditions that included spouses, children, Maria Santos, Carmen Rodriguez, and often other friends or community members who had become part of our extended family network. These gatherings recreated the warmth and inclusion that had characterized Mom's approach to hospitality while adapting to our current circumstances and relationships. The guest bedroom had been converted into a home office where I handled the bakery's bookkeeping and correspondence, surrounded by photographs of the business's history and framed letters from customers expressing appreciation for our services and community contributions. Mom's presence was evident throughout the space and the values and priorities that guided every decision. The legal aftermath of James's conviction had concluded with his appeal being denied and additional charges being filed related to his exploitation of other elderly clients. The precedent set by our case had led to policy changes at financial institutions throughout the state and increased awareness among families about protecting vulnerable members from financial manipulation. Lisa's divorce had been finalized with a settlement that recovered some of the assets James had hidden during his criminal activities. Her decision to pursue maximum legal remedies rather than seeking quick resolution had been emotionally difficult but financially beneficial, providing resources that supported her transition to financial independence. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Mom hadn't been so thorough in documenting James's crimes, Lisa reflected during one of our Sunday dinners. We might never have understood the scope of his deception or been able to recover what he stole. She understood that truth and justice require evidence and preparation, David replied. Even when she was fighting a disease that affected her memory, she found ways to protect information that would eventually protect all of us. The community recognition we had received for our restoration efforts included awards from business organizations, community groups, and legal advocacy organizations that supported elder abuse prevention. While the acknowledgments were gratifying, their real value was in the platform they provided for educating others about financial exploitation and family protection strategies. My speaking engagements had evolved into consulting work with families facing similar challenges, helping them navigate legal processes and business recovery while maintaining family relationships and community connections. This work had become a natural extension of my nursing background and the painful education our family had received through direct experience. Every family we help avoid what we went through honors Mom's memory and justifies the pain we endured during the crisis, I told audiences during these presentations. She taught us that surviving injustice isn't enough, we have an obligation to use our experience to protect others from similar harm. The scholarship program we had established in Mom's name provided financial assistance to young people pursuing careers in healthcare, business, or community service. The selection criteria emphasized character and commitment to helping others, rather than just academic achievement or financial need, reflecting Mom's belief that education should serve larger purposes than individual advancement. 5 students had received Martinez Family Scholarships during the program's first 2 years, and their thank you letters provided regular reminders of the positive impact that could emerge from even the most painful experiences. One recipient wrote, "Mrs. Martinez's story taught me that business success means nothing if it doesn't serve the community and protect the vulnerable. I want to build a career that honors those values." The bakery's success had attracted offers from investors and corporate buyers interested in franchising our concept or acquiring our recipes and business model. Each inquiry required careful consideration of whether the opportunity aligned with our values and could preserve the authenticity and community connection that distinguished our operation. Mom left us a business, but more importantly, she left us a mission. I reminded David and Lisa during discussions about these opportunities. Any partnership or expansion has to strengthen that mission rather than diluting it for the sake of growth or profit. Our employees had become genuine partners in this mission, contributing ideas for improvements and taking ownership of the bakery's reputation and community relationships. Carmen had been promoted to assistant manager with profit-sharing participation, recognition of her role in the successful restoration and ongoing operations. "This feels like the family business Mom always intended," Carmen observed during one of our weekly planning meetings. "Everyone who works here understands that we're not just making pastries, we're building something that serves and strengthens the community." The second anniversary of Mom's death was marked not with grief but with celebration of what had been accomplished in her honor. The memorial service at St. Mary's Catholic Church drew hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the Martinez family bakery and our family's journey from crisis to restoration. Father Miguel, who had witnessed our family's dysfunction at Mom's original funeral, spoke about the transformation he had observed and the inspiration it provided for his congregation and the broader community. Elena Martinez's legacy is not just in the business she built or the family she raised, but in the example of justice and healing that emerged from their darkest moment. The reception following the memorial service was held at the bakery, which had been decorated with photographs chronicling Mom's life and the business's evolution. Customers, employees, community leaders, and family friends shared stories about Mom's impact and the continued influence of her values in the restored operation. Maria Santos presented a scrapbook she had compiled containing letters, newspaper clippings, and photographs documenting the community's support during our family's crisis and celebration of our recovery. Elena knew that family strength comes from community connection, she said while presenting the gift. This collection shows how many people were invested in your success and inspired by your courage. The evening concluded with the lighting of candles in Mom's memory and the sharing of commitments to continue the work she had begun. David pledged to establish a business mentorship program for young entrepreneurs in the community. Lisa announced plans to coordinate financial literacy workshops for elderly residents vulnerable to exploitation. I committed to expanding our consulting services to help other families facing similar challenges. The 3 years that followed brought continued growth in both business success and community impact. The Martinez Family Bakery became a model for family business restoration and was featured in national publications about entrepreneurship, elder abuse prevention, and community economic development. The expansion into catering services had proceeded gradually and strategically, with contracts that strengthened rather than complicated our core operations. Our reputation for authenticity and reliability had attracted clients throughout the region who valued quality and cultural sensitivity in their event planning. The mentorship program David had established was serving 15 young entrepreneurs who received both financial support and business guidance from experienced community leaders. Several of these mentees had launched successful ventures that contributed to the local economy while maintaining the values of community service and ethical operation. Lisa's financial literacy workshops had educated over 200 elderly residents about protecting themselves from financial manipulation, using our family's experience as a case study in both vulnerability and successful resistance to exploitation. The program had been adopted by senior centers throughout the state and had influenced policy discussions about elder protection services. My consulting practice had helped 12 families navigate similar crises involving financial exploitation and family conflict, with success rates that exceeded those achieved through traditional legal approaches alone. The combination of practical business guidance and family counseling had proved effective in achieving both financial recovery and relationship restoration. The 4th anniversary of Mom's death brought the announcement that the Martinez Family Bakery had been selected to cater the state's annual conference on elder abuse prevention, an honor that would have made Mom proud beyond measure. The recognition represented not just business success but validation that our mission of service and protection was making a meaningful difference in people's lives. Carmen Rodriguez had been promoted to general manager and was considering opening a second location in a neighboring community that lacked access to authentic Mexican baking. Her leadership had become essential to our operations, and her vision for expansion aligned perfectly with our commitment to community service and cultural preservation. The scholarship program had grown to support 10 students annually, funded through a combination of bakery profits and community donations. The recipients were pursuing diverse careers in healthcare, social work, business, and law, but all shared a commitment to using their education in service of others. The family relationships that had been damaged by James's manipulation and our own poor communication had evolved into partnerships based on mutual respect, shared values, and individual growth. David had developed expertise in small business advocacy and was frequently consulted by other family enterprises facing challenges. Lisa had become a recognized leader in elder protection advocacy and had been appointed to several state advisory committees. Most importantly, we had learned to honor Mom's memory, not through perfect adherence to her specific wishes, but through faithful commitment to her underlying values of justice, service, and family loyalty. The business she had built was thriving, but more significantly, the principles she had lived by were being passed on to new generations through our work and example. The Martinez Family Bakery today serves as proof that families can overcome betrayal and manipulation through commitment to truth and mutual support. Mom's careful documentation of James's crimes had provided the foundation for justice, but her deeper gift was showing us how to transform pain into purpose and crisis into opportunity for growth. Standing in the bakery each morning at 5 o'clock, I often feel Mom's presence in the rhythm of the work and the satisfaction of serving others. Her physical absence remains painful, but her influence continues to guide every decision and inspire every improvement. The woman who was excluded from her own mother's funeral by siblings who misunderstood her situation had created a legacy that would protect and strengthen families for generations to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.